NFL Insider Tom Pelissero on the likelihood of Kellen Moore as the next Saints head coach. Ladies and gentlemen, the backdrop is the Rich Eisen Show with Tom Pelissero, previously mentioned. So Tommy is the one who we retweeted and talked about. He was the guy who said, look, Kellen Moore is going to have a conversation with the Saints after the Super Bowl. Kellen Moore is putting a staff together, all of that. Did a full reaction, feel good about it, happy about it, excited. Now let's hear in Tom's own words. Like it's one thing to decipher a tweet, right? And it's another thing to decipher the context whenever you hear it from his own mouth. Pause. So let's go ahead and take a listen.
Played the Super Bowl, as we all know. They faced the Chiefs in Arizona, and one of their coordinators left his bags there and stayed. And the question is Kellen Moore, the offensive coordinator for the Eagles, just going to be...
Rich Eisen with a very controversial shirt choice. I don't know how people get away with this. I mean, maybe I'm the only one that sweats. I don't know. But if I'm wearing that baby blue sultry shirt right there, doing a couple hours of talk radio, I'm sweating through that shirt. Like I am embarrassing myself with the stains that would be happening in that baby blue delicate material. And there's a few color shirts that are just begging to show some sweat. Gray, heathered blue, baby blue, pink, shirts like that. Come on. What are we doing here?
Moving into the head coach's office for the Saints, Tom.
Well, here's the latest I can tell you, Rich. We just reported this a few minutes ago. Saints GM Mickey Loomis called the other remaining candidates this morning and said that while there's no final decision, they plan to meet again with Kellen Moore after the Super Bowl.
What your boy right here, the face of the franchise, what I interpret this as is Mickey Loomis telling the other candidates, like, look, nothing's been done here, but we're meeting with Kellen Moore after the Super Bowl. If he accepts, we are good to go. So that's his way of telling them, like, look, it's up to Kellen. Okay, we plan on moving forward with Kellen if available, is how I read between the lines there.
Not allowed to talk to him this week. You're not allowed to talk to him during Super Bowl week. The soonest that this could happen would be February 9th is the game. February 10th is the next day. With Gannon, that was a little bit different because they had not even interviewed him. There, of course, was eventually a tampering charge, and they gave up a draft pick for it here. But Kellen Moore, had the initial Zoom. Then he had a meeting in Philadelphia.
Not just a meeting, Thomas. A 9-hour interview / meeting that went into the early hours of the morning. 9 hours. If you go on a 9-hour date, I mean, probably need to start ring shopping. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's a long time to be talking to somebody deep into the wee hours.
I believe it was Monday night. But basically how the Saints feel, from what I am told, is that they just didn't have enough time with Kellen Moore to, reach a final decision. Having said that, Kellen Moore has been setting up staff and figuring out who's going to be coming with him. All indications are that he wants this job. And Mickey Loomis.
Our God is an awesome God, he reigns. This is what I like to hear. This is it. This is it, Thomas. So let me break it down for you, ladies and gentlemen. Okay? What he is saying is what I said in our video last week talking about this, where it's like, you got to think again on a human level. Very similar to Aaron Glenn and the Jets, when people were like, well, he left without signing. He didn't sign the contract. Put yourself in their position. You're a human being. You'd go through a 9-hour interview. And then it's like, okay, cool. This all sounds great. You want to start talking about contract now? No, I do not. I can barely. I can't even hold my eyes open. Hey, you want to read through 74 pages of contract? No, I don't. I want to get some sleep. I'm exhausted. Okay, so it makes sense that sometimes, doesn't always happen like this. It would make sense that sometimes you say, like, look, we couldn't get to this. We couldn't get to the more formal stuff. We couldn't get to the technicalities, as we say in the business. So let's shelve that because that's less important right now. What's more important is, do we want to offer you the job? Do you want to accept the job? Are you interested in the job? What's your vision? That's more important, right? So instead of getting bogged down in all of that, it makes perfect sense that a team would say, let's just handle that later. Let's talk about that later. Now, because of the rules with the NFL, because of how the tampering and the windows you can talk to people, it would also make sense if you shelve that potentially you could shelve it for after the Super Bowl, right? So that's what I thought was happening, and I'm glad that Thomas seems to have backed that up.
Wants this job. And Mickey Loomis right now, if he wanted to hire Mike Kafka or Anthony Weaver or
He
Darren
could.
Rizzy, he could do that.
No
Kellen
doubt.
Moore is the one guy who can't be hired until after the Super Bowl. So you have to connect the dots a tiny bit on this, Rich, but I think it's fair to say all indications are right now that Kellen Moore is the top candidate for that job. And yes, quite possibly he's not going to need to get on a plane to head back after the game on Sunday.
And with all due respect to you and your reporting, and along with Ian's as well, I was connecting dots when I saw McCarthy say, I'm focusing on next year. I mean, there's a job opening here, and one that he,
right. And is it literally a job opening, right? Same with Rizzy. Technically, Darren Rizzy works for the New Orleans Saints, right? Technically, he's the interim head coach. So him saying, I plan on, being the special teams coordinator in Denver, that's connecting the dots. And I want to say something about the Rizzy thing. So people are getting this kind of confused too. They're saying, why doesn't Rizzy just stay on? Like, why doesn't he just stay on as a special teams coordinator? Again, you got to think about the human element. Is Darren Rizzy a great special teams coordinator? Absolutely. Are we better with him in the building? Yes, absolutely. But you have a guy who, even if it was interim, he was the boss. Okay, players love him. Players have been outspoken that he should be the head coach. Cam Jordan, Alvin Kamara, everybody except Drew Brees, has said he should be the next head coach. So if you keep that guy in the locker room, it could take away from the incoming coach trying to gain that locker room, right? Trying to, think about if you have a substitute teacher, okay? And everyone loves a substitute teacher, but you're getting a new teacher. The worst thing that could happen for that new teacher to be, to take, Jesus, went full on damn Elmer Fudd there. My God, I almost just had a stroke. Does anybody smell burnt popcorn? Jesus. But the worst thing that could happen to that new teacher is if the substitute teacher is hanging out in the back of the classroom. Because then all the students are going to be like half in, half out. I still want to talk to the sub. I still want to, that's my teacher. This isn't my teacher. That's my teacher. Okay, it's like the paradox of choice. You have too many choices. So as much as I like Rizzy, and to no fault of his own, I do think you have to get him out of the building because you don't want to have conflicting voices. Not saying that Rizzy would do it on purpose. It's just how humans are. It's just how it would take place.
Obviously knows this organization. That made it seem to me that he was reading tea leaves that they were going to go in another direction. Cliff Kingsbury, similar. So, listen, I know we all want to know something concretely.
I don't think Cliff had any interest in the job. I don't think Cliff was even a real candidate. McCarthy for sure.
Now, but it sure looks like this is Kellen Moore's gig, Tom.
Exactly. I would say that's a fair read on the situation, barring, something catastrophic here. In terms of Mike McCarthy, it's a little different because Mike never interviewed for the job. Yeah. I know that some people have misreported rumors about, the talks went badly and stuff. They never talked.
It never happened. It really, when you sit back and look at it, I mean, this makes Mike McCarthy look like one of the biggest clowns on earth. The fact that he's withdrawing, saying all these things, talking into both sides of the aluminum can, just talking to himself. But, yeah, I mean, the fact that the two sides never talked. I mean, you talk about some real agent leakage here. Whoever McCarthy's agent is, well done. McCarthy was, at one point, considered the favorite for the job. At one point, considered Loomis's guy. At one point, considered a shoo-in. Then he withdraws, all while never speaking to the Saints. When you really go back and look at it, it makes McCarthy look insane. It makes him look like he should be in Shutter Island, right? Like, he's sitting in his house by himself, simultaneously being the favorite, being the shoo-in, doing this, doing that, withdrawing. Oh, well, nothing ever happened.
And Mike's known Mickey for a quarter century since he was the offensive coordinator of the Saints back in 2000. They could have brought Mike in at any point and done an interview, but they kept kind of, I don't want to say stalling because there was a snowstorm in there that changed the cadence and, and those sorts of things here. But they never set it up. They never booked a plane ticket for Mike McCarthy. And at some point, you're sitting there and just going, this doesn't feel right. The last thing that McCarthy was going to do, because he did, he took a run at the Bears job. And from everything I was told, that interview went really well. They just always had Ben Johnson. That was their number one candidate.
Ben Johnson was almost the Bears coach last year. Like the Ben Johnson thing, before the season even ended, we were saying, like, look, Ben Johnson's going to Chicago. You can go ahead and write that down. You can go ahead and just book that one.
They ended up paying what it took to get him. With New Orleans, there was going to be more of a conversation in terms of Mike McCarthy and even being interested in that job. And listen, there's challenges in New Orleans, whether it's the salary cap, the fact that you're locked in with guaranteed money into Derek Carr, you've got an old, expensive roster. You're granted in a weak division, one that you would think, hey, this team is built to win now. When I say that, I'm not saying that like, oh, they got the best roster in the league. What I'm saying is you don't have a roster that looks like this, is composed like this, if you're not thinking we're winning in 2025. So, for Kellen Moore, who's interviewed for several.
The Saints are not winning in 2025, barring landing the next Jaden Daniels or something in the draft. But they are a work in progress, for sure. And until we clear the cap up, which hopefully we will be under the cap in 2026, 2027, significantly under the cap in 2027, and hopefully we'll be much younger. I would assume we are the youngest team in the NFL come 2027, or very close to it, once a lot of these contracts expire or the players retire. A little bit of a rhyme there, a little Dr. Seuss action. But I would assume all that's going to happen. But, all right, one big Iggy Azalea here. The but is we got to get through it, right? Like, we got to get through 2025, pseudo 2026 before we can get to the promised land. Okay, we're still in the middle of the 40 years, or whatever, however long, the manna and all that stuff through the desert. So we understand the linear path. I've had a tremendous amount of coffee today, ladies and gentlemen. We understand the path. The path is clear out the contracts, which are happening, clear out the older players, which is happening, boost the roster through draft picks, which hopefully happens. I mean, this does all kind of hinge on the fact that the front office can draft the right players and make the right moves. But the linear path is there. Where I'm sitting, which is on top of New Orleans sports media, where I'm sitting, it looks like somewhere in the neighborhood of 2 years. I would bookmark 2027 as when the Saints is going to be pretty close to ready to move forward. I'm not saying win the Super Bowl, but just, okay, young, talented roster, couple of years of infrastructure, got the head coach rolling, got the salary cap, we've brought in some players, we got rid of some aging players, we're good to go. I would say it's 2027 season. So two seasons, the next 2 seasons, probably a little rocky, but that third season, probably ready to roll. You can go ahead and throw away your brown paper bags.
Several years now for head coaching jobs. It sounds like this is one that he is, obviously intrigued enough to continue to go down the road on it. With regards to Mike McCarthy, I mean, we've talked about this before. You put his resume up against Mike Tomlin or Sean Payton, they look almost identical in terms of wins, playoff appearances.
Yeah, I mean, listen, like, in regards to Mike McCarthy, him. You know what I mean? So that's where I'm coming from.
Is all of one Super Bowl. For whatever reason, Mike McCarthy doesn't command that same level of respect in the media or among the fans. But absolutely, when you look at a cycle like this one where Mike Vrabel came back and Pete Carroll came back, I would anticipate that Mike McCarthy is very much in that mode. And with 7-8 jobs opening every year, I do anticipate he'll have opportunities coming up in 2026.
Yeah, especially with the CFL and the USFL and stuff or whatever. Who even cares? So there you go. There's the latest from Tom Pelissero himself. Now, there was one important part here. Let's see if I can find it. Let's see.
Coming with him, all indications are that he wants this job.
There it
Mickey
is.
Loomis right now.
That is the big thing. Kellen Moore wants this job. Say it with me. How many words? Kellen Moore wants this job. 5 words. Most important 5 words we could hear, because that is what it all hinges on. It all hinges on, does Kellen Moore want it? Does Kellen Moore want to have the conversations, further the conversations, build the staff, accept the job in 7 days? Okay, so hearing that, music to my ears. That's what I wanted to hear, because all of this speculation of, well, we think he's the top candidate, we know he's the top candidate, we know the Saints want it, all of that doesn't matter if Kellen Moore doesn't want the job, right? So those 5 words right there, say it with me again, Kellen Moore wants the job. There you go. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for watching. This has been an insane couple of weeks here, but it's been an honor to be the voice and the source for all of you to keep up with what's going on. It's been a pleasure. So thank you very much for the engagement, the views, the comments, all of that, the shares, whatnot. Keep it up. We are rocking and rolling to the top of the mountain. And, yeah, we're not going to stop until we are the #1 most watched, most viewed channel creator in this industry. So thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next